Andrew Jackson. When you hear that name, what do you think of? A hero for the common person or the architect of something truly awful? Well, the uncomfortable truth is he was kind of both. So let's dive into the story of these two conflicting legacies and what they really tell us about American history. And this really gets right to the heart of it all. On one side, you have the birth of what felt like a more inclusive democracy. But on the other, a period of just terrible suffering. Now, the key thing to get is that these two realities didn't just happen at the same time. They're completely tangled up together. So how is that even possible? Let's start with the man right in the center of the storm. Okay, so first, let's look at the side of the story that made Andrew Jackson a hero to millions of people. He was seen as the people's president, the guy who was bringing about a government not for the fancy elites, but for the common citizen. And you really can't overstate how revolutionary this idea was back then. Before Jackson, political power was pretty much exclusively in the hands of a wealthy, landowning elite. His movement completely shattered that mold. It broke down those old property requirements and gave a political voice to a huge, new group of white American men. This new philosophy was called Jacksonian democracy, and it had two main parts. First, it really boosted the power of the president, who Jackson saw as the one person who could directly represent what the people wanted. And second, it was all about bringing more and more people into the political process. This was a fundamental shift in who was seen as having the right to govern. And this quote just brilliantly sums up the core ideal. Jackson's powerful and simple declaration, "The people are the government," was way more than just a slogan. For his supporters, this felt like the promise of America was finally being fulfilled, a nation that was truly run by its ordinary citizens. But, and this is a huge but, that promise of democracy for some people came at an absolutely devastating cost for others. And this brings us to the second, much, much darker side of Jackson's legacy, the Trail of Tears and the terrible price of American expansion. And this is the unavoidable, painful truth of the era. The new land and the new political power for white citizens didn't just appear out of thin air. It was taken. It was achieved by systematically dispossessing the Native American populations who had called that land home for generations. The main tool used for this was the Indian Removal Act of 1830. This wasn't some minor policy, no, this was a cornerstone of Jackson's entire vision. This law gave him the authority to force tribes like the Cherokee, Creek, and Choctaw off their ancestral homelands in the southeast and march them west. It led to the forced and absolutely brutal relocation of thousands and thousands of people. And here you have this powerful protest from Cherokee chief John Ross. His words just cut right to the heart of the injustice. "We are not foreigners, but the original inhabitants of America." You see, this was never a negotiation between equals. It was the displacement of a people from their own country. So here we are, with two completely different histories, one of expanding freedom and the other of violent oppression. How in the world do we reconcile them? Well, that is the very heart of what's known as the Jacksonian paradox. This is probably the most important thing to understand about Andrew Jackson's time. It's a study in contradiction, because these two legacies, democracy and suffering, are not just linked, they are inseparable. You literally could not have had one without the other. This lays it all out so perfectly. The story of democracy on the left, the rise of the common citizen, was basically financed by the story of suffering on the right. The land and resources needed for that democratic expansion were taken through the Indian Removal Act. You just can't have one side of this ledger without the other. So the crucial point is this: the tree of American democracy, as it grew in this era, was rooted in the soil of great and lasting suffering. The two are one and the same history. Jackson's presidency didn't just happen to coincide with this suffering. It literally advanced one group's liberty by taking away another's. And this leaves us with a final, really challenging question. A question that goes far beyond just Andrew Jackson. How should history remember leaders whose actions create both progress and pain? There's no easy answer, but confronting that complexity, that messiness, that's what understanding history is all about.